right now some details about how to ask a question should you wish to. If we don't have an opportunity to answer all of your questions during the session today, we will create a frequently asked questions documents so that we'll be able to share those with you on our website at a later date. So again, welcome to all of you. And slowly, I'm having a bit of difficulty advancing the slides here. Okay, and maybe we can. So I'm Heather McConnell. As I said, I'm the Associate Director for Guideline Implementation and Knowledge Transfer at the RNAO, and have had the pleasure of working with all of our best practice spotlight organizations in Ontario in various different capacities, and certainly have had opportunities to work with many of you that are on the call here today, and those that are interested in becoming a BPSO. I look forward to having opportunities to share with you the details of this important initiative. So today we're going to really focus on helping you get a better understanding of the Long-Term Care Best Practice Spotlight Organization Designation Program. We'll talk a bit about the eligibility requirements in order to apply. We'll have some opportunity to talk about the impacts of BPSOs as described by BPSO leaders, and I'll introduce you to them very, very shortly. We'll talk about the designation deliverables and the application process and the related timelines, and then some supports that are provided by RNAO. We'll discuss those throughout the session. And of course, we hope to have some time at the end for some questions and discussion. So with no further ado, we'll get started. And just to position our work today and our discussions today, that RNAO is a professional association for registered nurses, nurse practitioners, and nursing students in Ontario. And we are seen as the strong, credible voice leading the nursing profession to influence and promote healthy public policy and clinical excellence. So we have really two major pillars of the work that we do at RNAO: healthy public policy and advocacy, excuse me, and our clinical program that focuses on best practice guidelines. So the best practice guidelines program is really what we're here to talk about today. And it is a pillar of our work that we do related to clinical excellence. So the mandate of the program is to develop, disseminate, and actively support the uptake and sustainability of both clinical and healthy work environment best practice guidelines, and to evaluate their impact on resident, client, organizational, and health system outcomes. So that's a long sentence, but has a number of key components to it. And certainly through the work that we've been doing since 1999, we've been funded by the Government of Ontario since 1999 to do this work, and we've gained great expertise in all of these areas. The work that frames our work within the International Affairs and Best Practice Guidelines Center, which is where the BPSO work is situated, along with all of our other guideline development and evaluation activities. This model is really to help describe to you how we see the structure of our work. So the top circle in the center is really focusing on guideline development. The circle to the bottom left is really what we're going to be speaking about today on implementation and sustainability. At the bottom right is focusing on evaluation and impact on the clients, providers, organizations in the system, which is that final smaller circle to the top right. So today we're really going to be focusing on that component related to implementation. Part of the implementation program includes our long-term care best practices program. And the goal of the long-term care best practices program is to improve resident care outcomes in Ontario long-term care homes through systematic approaches to the implementation and sustainability of evidence-based practices. So you can see the linkage between the goal and program goal of this particular program and the overall goal of what I've just described for the best practices program. And many of you will know your long-term care best practices coordinator, and many of them are on the call with us here today. And you've built relationships with them, and they're an integral part of the long-term care best practices program. So today what we're going to be focusing on is that organizational level strategies to help support the uptake of evidence in practice, which is our best practice spotlight organization program. But you can see that we also have implementation strategies at the individual level, which include our Champions Network, Advanced Clinical Practice Fellowship Program, RNAO communities and professional development opportunities, and also at the systems level with implementation programs. And that's really the long-term care best practices program is really an excellent example of one of our system levels programs. So we're going to talk now about very specifically about the BPG program, but I just wanted to give you a bit of sense of how it fits into the bigger context of the RNAO's implementation methodology. So what is the goal of the BPSO program? And really the goal of this entire program is to influence the uptake of best practice guidelines across all healthcare organizations to enable practice excellence and positive client or resident outcomes. And how we do that is through a very structured program in which organizations partner with RNAO to implement, in the case of long-term care, a minimum of 3 clinical BPGs over a 3-year period, and then attain their designation as a best practice spotlight organization. And this includes an application process and formal partnership with RNAO. And the release of the RFP last week was the start of the cycle for this formal partnership. So the application process starts with us actually releasing the RFP and having these information sessions. And then there are a number of specific requirements, which we'll talk more about later on, but you can see them here on the slide. Systematic BPG implementation, establish of an infrastructure, regular reporting, capacity building of staff, dissemination, thinking about sustainability from the beginning, and then measuring outcomes through standard indicators. Once BPSOs are designated after that initial 3-year period, there is an expectation that they continue to expand the implementation work that they've already started, spread and sustain the use of guidelines, mentor other organizations, and continue to measure outcomes. And we are proud to say that within the long-term care sector, we have 129 long-term care homes that are participating in this program currently. And you'll be able to see from the diagram that we have some that are designated, have completed their 3-year period, and are now acting as mentors to others. We have a large number that are part of our pre-designate group, and then we have a regional area that has long-term care homes that are linked with it. Also important for you to know that not only is the long-term care BPSO program available in Ontario and across Canada, but also internationally. And delighted to say that we have BPSOs that are representing over 1,000 sites across the world. We have found that BPSOs from other countries come to us. They've heard about the success that others have had with this work and are actually approaching us to join the BPSO program. And so actually in the last several months during this period of intense global pandemic, we've actually had 4 organizations from other countries that have reached out to us to join the BPSO program. And so they're going to be starting very shortly with their work in implementing clinical practice guidelines, and we'll be supporting them from a distance, and their organizations will be supporting the funding required to be able to do this work. So we're really delighted to see the continued growth of this across the world. So in order for the long-term care BPSO designation, these are really the objectives of the program specific to long-term care. So we want to establish long-term partnerships with long-term care homes that focus on making an impact on resident care through the evidence-based nursing practice. We want to be able to learn more about and be able to demonstrate strategies for successfully implementing best practice guidelines at the individual and organizational level. We want to be able to establish and adopt effective and consistent approaches to evaluate implementation, utilizing appropriate structure, process, and outcome indicators. And finally, to really focus on integrating effective strategies for system-wide guideline implementation with a real focus on long-term care. And this is just an illustration of some of the BPSOs that are part of the program currently. And delighted to say that, as I said earlier, that this number is continuing to grow and will continue to grow with this next cohort, which we're calling Cohort H. So the request for proposals was released last Friday, and it is very specific to organizations, long-term care homes within Ontario And we are looking to support a new cohort of these long-term care BPSOs over this next 3-year period. Successful applicants will initially enter into a formal agreement with RNAO, and that will be from 2021 to 2024. And that will be an agreement that will be renewed annually, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the presentation today. So I'm just going to speak very briefly about eligibility criteria, and really what we're wanting to focus on with the selection of successful BPSOs, so organizations that are thinking about applying. There is quite a list of eligibility requirement in the actual RFP itself. But I think the critical things that you want to reflect on are, do you have support from your organization, both from the senior leadership and the clinical staff, to move forward with this work? There is a requirement for letters of support in the RFP itself, but it's really critical that you have a solid discussion within your organization to make sure that everybody understands what this is all about and that they want to engage in this partnership. So that's really critical to have that support. You also want to have organizations, and we're looking for organizations that have made a commitment to evidence-based practice, and that includes having either implemented guidelines in the past or have been starting to work with your coordinators to implement guidelines. Maybe you've trained champions, or maybe you've been able to send your staff to learn more about specific aspects of care and practice that are evidence-based. So those are the kinds of organizations that we're looking for, and we know that they'll be successful. And also we're looking for organizations that have had opportunities to partner with others in either small or big projects that have had an impact both within the organization and external to the organization. So although there's quite a list of eligibility criteria listed in the RFP, I think those are the critical things. We're looking for strong organizational support. We're looking for organizations that have had successful partnerships with others in the past and have clearly demonstrated a commitment to evidence-based practice. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Kerry Garcia. Kerry, you're on there. You are. Great to see you. And you're the BPSO liaison for FJ Davy Home. And we're absolutely delighted to have you with us today to share with us a little bit about your BPSO experience. I can see you've got some colleagues there with you, and we'll take an opportunity to hear from you first, and then we'll hear from Julia at the Wexford. So please take it away.
So I have with me Lindsay Serna. She's our full-time nurse practitioner. So I'm going to start talking, and then Lindsay's going to finish up. So we're really, really excited to be able to talk to you about what it means to become a best practice spotlight organization. We're going to share a bit about our journey and our experiences on this crazy ride of implementation. So RNAO's BPGs really, and finding a way to ensure sustainability. So we've implemented multiple BPGs, but I'm going to focus on the impact of person and family-centered care and what that has had on our home, because I know that that's a great change that the RNAO is making, so that BPG will be implemented. So just a bit about us. We're a very large 374-bed long-term care home, and we're located in the Northeast Lynn in a northern Ontario town called Sault Ste. Marie. It took some time for our home to decide to take the leap, but we had a persistent, very engaging long-term care best practice coordinator named Fida Poirier that drove all the way up to our home and spent a couple of years really convincing us that this would be an excellent thing to do. And so she showed us that we need to look for opportunities for early successes and practice changes, which is really important in becoming a spotlight organization, which in turn leads to sustained practice changes throughout reinforcement of our current evidence-based practices. So essentially, you don't need to recreate the wheel. You build on processes that you already have in place. And as we all know in long-term care, for some reason, we have a hard time taking credit for all of the amazing things that we're already doing. So person-centered care is it's a way of thinking and doing things that sees the people using our health services as equal partners in planning, developing and monitoring care to make sure it meets their needs and involves working with people and their families to find the best way to provide that care. Implementation supports the resident and patient by focusing on practical approaches to culture change and to improve resident and family satisfaction. And we've seen that in spades here at the FJ Davy Home. So it has a huge impact on the culture of the home and resident care. It's been far-reaching in our home since we've implemented person and family-centered care. And like I said before, we have implemented many other BPGs, but this is just the focus. Two of the greatest impacts can be seen through the practice changes of, for our home in particular, removal of levels of care and the implementation of Orcs Through Our Eyes program. And I know Heather was talking about partnerships before, and that's one partnership that has just been amazing for our home. We implemented a new policy and removed levels of care with the full support of the management team, our medical director and physicians group, and the home has moved forward in removing all levels of care throughout the home. So by doing that, we provide the resident with the knowledge necessary for self-management. And this is also increased communication. So there's ongoing communication between staff, residents, and POAs in regards to care goals that are ever changing. So decisions are being made by the residents and the power of attorney, as well as family members in real time as those changes happen. So this policy was implemented and rolled out facility-wide in January 2018, and it's been excellent for us in our home. And as you can imagine, this has been very positive during the COVID-19 pandemic. As pre-pandemic, there was an open line of communication with families and POAs, so that in regards to any health changes. So families were always consulted and kept informed before COVID, and it's even more important since the beginning of the pandemic. So we had already built that trust with the families, which has helped us so much through this, because we had that communication, and the nurses were used to communicating consistently and constantly with all families with any health changes. That's pretty much my spiel. I could go on and on and on about the impacts that becoming a best practice spotlight organization has had on our home. Lindsay's going to speak to some more wonderful impacts, but I guess I just want to leave you with, if you're thinking about becoming a spotlight organization, it's a lot of hard work. The journey is long, and sometimes it's very, very overwhelming, but the supports from the RNAO are phenomenal. And it is definitely worth it when you see the impacts it has on your staff and your morale and the residents in your home and the care practices. And now I'm going to let Lindsay speak to some more.
Hi, everybody. I guess another thing we were going to just touch base upon, and sorry, I'm reading my notes, I'm looking down a little bit, but recently through, while we've been part of this best practice spotlight organization, we also went through accreditation. So I think it's important to say that, you know, we use some of the best practice guidelines through that accreditation practice. That the accreditation team looked at the best practice initiatives that we'd had in the home, and they were very happy to see that we were using evidence-based practice, and we had a lot of evidence to support many high priority standards. So protocols and procedures that were based on some of the RNAO best practice guidelines. We use current research and evidence-informed guidelines to improve the quality of service. And we were able to attain accreditation with commendation in September of 2019. We have our best practice guidelines implemented and embedded in our quality protocols and our QP plan as well, which has been really helpful, because as you know, those are a lot of work to do for a home on an annual basis. There are a lot of leadership and educational opportunities that come with a BPSO experience as well. So taking on a large project like that can seem like a really daunting task for a lot of us. And we have found that a lot of our staff actually feel very empowered once they've been provided with educational opportunities. And they like to be able to use their new knowledge and apply that knowledge with their residents. And they know, especially when they know it makes an impact on our residents. So an example of this was very small, but we had implemented something like the 4 Ps, so pain, position.
Davidson Acres.
Join the meeting.
Oh, sorry, pain, position, placement, and personal needs with our environmental and housekeeping staff, so they could also kind of make sure that the needs of our residents were being met. Like I said, something really small, but really empowered another discipline and other workers in our home, which was part of our best practice guideline work. There's a lot of, like, that's just one example. There's many things that we did, and we won't get into them or we'll run out of time, but there are a lot of educational opportunities as well. We had one of our wound care champion attend the Wound Care Institute and brought a lot of that really great information back. I myself was going to attend the Wound Care Institute. That was supposed to be last March, but that was canceled due to COVID. I am going to attend the Clinical Best Practice Institute that will be running virtually though, and that's like a really great educational opportunity. You will see a lot of support with seeking educational opportunities. I reach out to Fida, who's our coordinator, I guess, and she is great to get back to me about finding courses that are within my research, my interest area, which has been really helpful as well. We also had one of our registered nurses completed advanced practice fellowship. That was basically like self-guided learning and has been able to use that to improve some of the quality, indicators for our residents as well. We talked about community partnerships. We have had a lot of them. Kerry mentioned the OARC. Also, we've kind of collaborated with some of the universities and colleges. We had third-year Sioux College students and Nipissing BSCN students work closely on with champions on projects to sustain our BPGs. So nursing students were able to do the Through Our Eyes program, and also they created education and implemented some of that education with our staff about assessment of pain management and addressing abuse, which is some of the other BPGs we used. We had lots of champions. Our first year we had 15 champions. The next year we had 12, and I think currently we have over 45 champions in-house, which I think is great. And, like I said, these champions are often empowered, so they're pushing and advocating for change. They're educating their peers, and they're really wanting, to use the knowledge that they've gained for the benefit of our residents, which is great. The home has been recognized in our community for hard work, and it's known for being person and family centered, which is great. This has actually been shown in some of the awards we've received. The Sioux has an award that's the best long-term care home, and we have won that for 3 years, I believe, in a row now, which is an amazing thing, being recognized for that. We also did some work with the Sioux Rising Stars, and this was about seniors. This is from a seniors rights committee for Sault Ste. Marie, and we worked with them to talk about resident abuse and the challenges that long-term care homes do face. Through that presentation, an opportunity arose for Indigenous cultural sensitivity training for our staff as well. So kind of open up one door, and then multiple opportunities do end up kind of presenting themselves once you make a bit of connections with your community partners. We had a lot of challenges. I'm not going to say it was all easy. We are a large home. We have 12 resident home units. We have 374 beds, about 500 staff. As many long-term care homes in the province, we do have a staffing crisis that is ongoing, has not been made better with COVID. We have a lot of staff burnout, especially during this pandemic right now. We have multiple projects and committees, and it's always difficult to keep staff morale up and keep them engaged. We have had a change of leadership, but despite all these things, we were able to kind of pull in key players to kind of keep things moving forward. And I think the one thing I want to leave on is talking about how the BPSO project itself has maybe helped throughout the pandemic, and really I think the focus on being person and family centered has helped us really look at what's important during these really uncertain times. For those of us who work in long-term care, we're aware of the issues we have. We know we have staffing shortages. We have staff that are burnt out from the physical work, but also the emotional piece of that, and really being empathetic for our residents and our families. But even with that, those who have stayed and continue to work and show up every day are working hard to meet the needs of our residents, but not only just those basic needs, but really want to respect their wishes for the time that they have left with us. So, the pieces that we talked about, removing the levels of care, that's still a lot of work and that's ongoing, having those conversations, but it does allow for the family to reflect on what the resident wanted, what their goals of care are, which can change, to just promote the best, resident-centered care and family care that we can. The communication that we talked about was really quite helpful, because when families weren't permitted to enter the long-term care homes, that was our only way of connecting, despite, all those who were gravely ill or end of life care, but there was still restrictions on numbers and those who could enter the home. And I really think that has made a huge difference with them. I mean, we got creative with our Skype and FaceTime type visits, so we could keep the mental health of our residents up for those who could participate in those types of things. And that was another way we could connect, which I think was quite nice. So I really think that this has really been a positive thing overall for our home, and we are continuing to work on another BPG, and I'm happy to see what's going to come of that. That's it for me.
Fabulous. Well, thank you to both of you for sharing the work that you've been doing in person and family-centered care and other guideline work and the outcomes that this has had for your staff, your residents, and the home itself. So thank you so much for sharing that with all of us. I'm going to turn now to, let me just see here if I can advance the slides. Now we're going to hear from Julia Mason from the Wexford, which is in Scarborough, Ontario. And she's the coordinator of staff development and quality improvement. And she's brought us a video. So she's going to share this with us, and we'll listen for her, and then we'll come back together to really focus on the specific deliverables for BPSO.
Hello, everyone. My name is Julia, and I'm the coordinator of staff development, quality improvement facilitator at the Wexford Residence. Today, I will be sharing with you our BPSO journey from the application process until where we are today. The Wexford Residence is a long-term care facility located in Scarborough, Ontario. We are governed by a board of directors, and we are licensed for 166 long-term care residents, as well as 90 seniors apartments. Recently, we just became a formal partner of the Ontario Scarborough Health Team. We were accepted into the BPSO program in 2018. The reason why we wanted to apply to the BPSO program was to utilize professional development opportunities to engage staff and increase knowledge translation, ensure the highest quality of care is provided to residents, while ensuring our practice is holistic and evidence-based. We wanted to engage staff and residents in our quality initiatives, explore new community partnerships, as well as explore the benefit of the BPSO program towards our accreditation process. Once you receive the application, there was a full review that included everybody that's a part of our interdisciplinary team. We reviewed the terms and conditions of the program and the terms of reference. We also obtained a substantial amount of written support from the board of directors, senior leadership, family and resident council, union, frontline workers, and the medical team. We also ensured that we gave ourselves enough time to complete all areas of the application for a comprehensive read. So when considering an area of focus in terms of choosing a best practice guideline, it helped when we reviewed the Canadian Institute for Health Information data, and we considered the provincial averages and HQO benchmarks. We assessed our internal statistics, so we really wanted to see, are there any areas in the home that required review for program evaluation or any inspection protocols? We researched the best practice guidelines that align with our quality improvement work within our home. And we also wanted to take into consideration, where will our best practice changes have the most impact? When choosing a BPSO lead, we wanted to consider someone who has a knowledge of quality improvement initiatives, has the knowledge of best practice guidelines and their impact, that they're involved in the home, so in different areas, so whether it be committees, subcommittees, we wanted somebody else who was well-rounded, someone who had strong leadership and interpersonal skills, as well as somebody who is able to commit for the full duration of the program. So when we applied to the BPSO program, the Wexford decided that we would choose the 3 following BPGs: preventing falls and reducing injury from falls, oral health, supporting adults who require assistance, as well as person and family-centered care. So over the next couple slides, I will be sharing with you some of the work that we have done over the last 2.5 years when it comes to implementing our best practice guidelines. So on the left-hand side, we've adopted a bunch of dementia-ability methods into our practice, the biggest one being the all about me. So for residents who are on our secure units of 4th floor and 7th floor, when they move into the home, we do complete the All About Me template as outlined by Dementiability, and that just acts as a catalyst for staff to engage in meaningful conversation with residents, and they have the opportunity to get to know the residents for those who are not able to communicate themselves. That initiative has also expanded to other home areas in our home. So not only the 4th floor and the 7th floor, but our person and family centered care BPG team has now been working on implementing the All About Me to other units. In the middle, you will see a pictorial representation of our mission, vision, and values. And previous to 2020, our core value was just Excel with no S. And recently, the board of directors has changed our value to include Excels, which the S now stands for sensitivity to the unique individual. So we are now really diving into looking at people's religion, looking at their past experiences, and really trying to shape care based on that particular individual. On the right-hand side, you will see that we have a Hospice Palliative Care of Ontario. We've worked very diligently over the last 12 months to change our advanced directives into goals of care. So now when somebody is admitted into our long-term care home, we have an extensive conversation around goals of care, wishes of care, fears, funeral arrangement plannings, and we really moved away from the level 1, 2, 3, 4. So send me to hospital, example, CPR, no CPR. We still honor those, but we were really moving to more an individualized plan of care that is constantly changing based on the residents' wishes. Other items of our person and family-centered care program that we have implemented is the person-centered language guidelines supported by the Alzheimer's Society. So we're really educating staff and family to use language that is inclusive of the resident. We do not want to label residents. We're really trying hard to move away from words like diaper, wander, sundowning. So that's definitely a culture change here at the Wexford, but utilization of this guideline from the Alzheimer's Society has been very beneficial and very supportive. In the middle, our home did participate in the Through Your Eyes program supported by the Ontario Association of Residents Council, and we did produce a video actually that we show in orientation around the Residents' Bill of Rights and what the Residents' Bill of Rights looks like here at the Wexford, and that is shared in our Surge Learning environment. And then on the right-hand side is one of the newest additions that we have that supports our sensitivity to the unique individual. We've adopted some of the elements from Embracing Diversity from the CLRI in terms of just helping us navigate through the different aspects of care that we need to take into consideration when it comes to providing an inclusive environment for our residents here at the home, as well as an inclusive care plan. Next, we'll move on to preventing falls and reducing injury from falls. This is one of the bigger also BPGs that we implemented here at the home. On the right-hand side, we did create a brochure for preventing falls and reducing injury from falls that's in every admission package. We also had that brochure translated into Cantonese because we do have a lot of Cantonese speaking residents here at the home, and that brochure has been well received by staff and family members. And then on the right-hand side, you will see a sample of our validated tool that we use in our point-click care environment. So previous to implementing the best practice guideline for falls, we were not using a clinically validated tool. So we were not generating a falls risk score to help us care plan. So after going through the process, we decided that we would implement a validated tool that has proven to be very beneficial for us at the home. Oral health, same similar thing on the left-hand side. We had an oral health assessment, a part of our head-to-toe assessment, but we really wanted to focus on a very thorough. So we decided to implement the oral health assessment tool for non-dental professionals in our PCC environment. So this assessment is completed upon admission and significant change in our point-click care environment. So registered staff are trained to do a visual assessment on a resident and report the findings to neither our in-house nurse practitioner or our in-house physician. No score is generated, but it does help us with effective care planning and picking up on any oral health changes that may negatively impact the resident. On the right-hand side, we have a oral care brochure that was also placed into our admission package for families to read, because oral health is definitely one of those things that we want to make sure is addressed once the resident moves in and the families are aware of what we're doing here in the home. So capacity building. So over the last 2.5 years, there's been plenty of opportunities to engage in BPSO activities. On the left-hand side, you will see myself holding our BPSO poster at the Knowledge Exchange. So that's an opportunity to engage in knowledge sharing of the work that you're doing in your home with other BPSO facilities. On the right-hand side, that was one of our most recent virtual BPSO champion training. So unfortunately, due to COVID, we're not able to send staff to the in-person training, but we've definitely utilized the resources that RNAO has made available for us through virtual training. And this summer, I think we've managed to train an additional 6 champions given the current situation. So we're very happy for that. Additional capacity building activities that the Wexford has engaged in is we've had a publication in the Ontario Association of Residents Council's Seasons magazine for the spring-summer of 2020. And we really wanted to focus on managing personal expressions using a person-centered approach. So we talked about some of the interventions actually that we've implemented from our best practice guideline in our short article, and how the recommendations align with the changes that we've made in the home. In the middle, you will see myself as well as our nurse practitioner and Heather McConnell at the Advanced Clinical Practice Fellowship Symposium that was held in March of this year. And I, Julia, I completed my ACPF in understanding the use of cannabis for unmanaged pain and behaviors. So that was an opportunity that I engaged in over 4 months with the support of the Wexford, as well as with the support of my primary mentor, Sierra Cook. And on the right-hand side, I did have the opportunity to present at the Cohort G launch earlier this year, and I focused on integrating BPSO work into current quality improvement. So with all of these changes and all of this work that the Wexford has been producing, it's very important that we sustain the work that has been implemented. So monitoring and sharing outcomes assists in sustaining BPSO work. The Wexford achieves this by sharing data with Professional Advisory Council and Board of Directors, Continuous Quality Improvement Committee, sharing data at our monthly interdisciplinary quality improvement committee, which also acts as our BPSO steering committee, and monitoring our successes through Enquire. So Enquire is the data system that we'll use for quantitative values, and we do that on a quarterly basis. So I would not be able to do all of this work if I did not have very dedicated champions to assist with the implementation on the floor level. So champion recruitment is very important, and it has been very beneficial to the home as well as myself for our success in the home. So on the left-hand side, that is a picture of our 3 best practice co-leads who have been very gracious to donate their time. In the middle is a more recent picture of our oral health launch that we had, I believe, last month, early August, for our oral health BPG. Everything had to be put on hold, so we tried to come up with the most innovative approach to let people know that we're still working on BPG initiatives. It just might look a little bit different. And then on the right-hand side is a photo from last year where we did our person and family-centered care launch, and we really focused on our language. So going back to that person-centered language guideline from Alzheimer's Society, that was the foundation to our education. And these are just some BPSO activities. So we have pictures on the left-hand side from our launch. So I did mention that we had our Falls brochure translated into Cantonese, so you can see that in that picture. In the middle, for person and family-centered care, we played a Jeopardy game, actually, where staff would come. They'd pick a number. Based on the numbers is the difficulty of the question. So we would ask them, please give me an alternate word for a resident who is wandering. So then they can kind of ponder. And if they didn't have the answer, we would show them in the person-centered language guidelines, what's the alternate language for residents that are displaying certain types of personal expressions. So even by calling it personal expressions, we're really trying to move away from the language of responsive behaviors. And that is definitely a work in progress, and we're still working on it. And I'm sure it's just going to be something that we're just going to have to keep going over and over until, it becomes second nature. And then on the right-hand side is our picture of our launch, our oral health launch. And because we're not able to have food, everybody knows food draws people in. We did give away sample size mouthwashes and toothpaste, as well as we had a grand draw basket filled of all these different oral health items that staff can use at home. So once again, my name is Julia, and I just wanted to walk you through some of the things that we've done since becoming a pre-designate BPSO home. It's been quite a journey. You do learn a lot. You get to meet a lot of people. You're very well supported by RNAO, and we thank RNAO for all the support that they've been giving the home as we go through, and we have a couple months left. So if you need to contact me, this is my contact information. Please feel free to reach out, and all the best with your proposal completion.
Well, that was fabulous. So thank you to Kerry and Lindsay and Julia. I hope you found it helpful to hear their experiences and understand some of the elements that they've utilized to connect with their BPSO work. So I'm just going to move us ahead to the BPSO deliverables. Now, we'll move through this relatively quickly, but I think many of them you've heard Kerry and Lindsay and Julia speak to. So in terms of the requirements, obviously there's a 3-year partnership with RNAO to be renewed and reviewed annually, provided criteria are met. Sorry, I was just putting on my video. And again, being able to contribute the necessary financial resources to support guideline implementation, evaluation, and sustainability during this pre-designate period and beyond. So the critical component of all of this, and you heard both our team at FJ Davy and the Wexford speak about systematic implementation. And so the implementation process involves a variety of different aspects, and many of these are actually deliverables of the BPSO program. And they are such because we found that these particular approaches have been proven to be most successful. So when you're thinking about implementation, there are some specific requirements related to implementation. And for this cohort, Cohort H, there is a requirement for 1 mandatory guideline, which is the guideline on person and family-centered care. And you heard both Kerry and Lindsay and Julia speak about their involvement in the implementation of person and family-centered care. And we've made this mandatory this time around because we do realize that this is really foundational to all that we do. Most of our BPSOs actually do implement this guideline in their pre-designate period, and so we have made it a mandatory requirement. And so in addition to the person and family-centered care guideline, there is a requirement that you pick a minimum of 2 guidelines from the list of guidelines in Table 1 of the RFP. And it's quite a lengthy list, but you'll recognize that all of them are relevant to the care and the services provided to older adults in long-term care. So the person and family-centered care guideline must be implemented across the entire long-term care home. And the other 2 may be implemented either across the long-term care home or potentially within certain home areas or programs, et cetera, within your setting, depending on your particular circumstances. One of the guidelines needs to be implemented by the end of year 1, and the other 2 implemented by the end of year 2. Ideally, that allows for the year 3 to really focus on integration, sustainability, and evaluation. Now, if you're a multi-site home, neither of the 2 organizations that spoke were multi-sites, but we do have a number of organizations that are multi-site homes. If you're a multi-site home, you can plan to initiate your work within one home and spread it to others during your designate period, or you may wish to conduct it across the entire organization all at the same time. And that's actually what the vast majority of the organizations we've worked with have chosen to do. However, if you choose the latter, the person and family-centered care guideline needs to be implemented across all of the homes that are part of your collective. So I just want to make that clear, and I think it's outlined fairly in quite a bit of detail in the RFP itself. There's also an opportunity to choose to integrate RNAO's BPG order sets within your electronic medical record system, and PCC many of you are using. We're doing some work with them right now. And again, this really helps to integrate the actual interventions into the electronic medical record system, which helps, again, to be consistent in practice. So that may be something that you'd like to look at further. We talked a little bit about the BPSO lead and the coach in the presentation that Kerry and Lindsay did. They spoke about involvement with their coach and the work that they did to help support them in their work. And certainly, Julia had photos of those activities as well in her slideshow today. So the BPSO coach is one of our long-term care best practice coordinators, and we will assign a coach to each BPSO in the pre-designate period to help support and guide them through the implementation process. There's also a need for a BPSO lead or liaison, who is the contact person, the key contact person at the long-term care home, who will help to support and coordinate the implementation, evaluation, and sustainability activities. The BPSO steering committee is really the accountability structure within the organization. So the steering committee, you may call it something else. It might integrate with an existing committee that you have, but the intention there is that there is a structure in place that allows the BPSO lead or liaison and the implementation team to report to get the support they need in order to be successful with their work. Champions. You heard both of our homes speak about champions, and there is a requirement for preparing champions. Currently, we're doing all of that virtually, but hopefully in the future, we'll be able to resume in-person workshops. But certainly right now, the champions, there's a requirement for a certain number of champions, and I think that you can see that those numbers will grow over the pre-designate period of time. Critical thing is to actually ensure that you find and support your champions in contributing to this work. And I think both of our homes that spoke today really reflected on the impact that the champions were having on their implementation efforts. The BPG Institute, Julia showed some photos of that, and I think Lindsay said she was coming to join us this year at our virtual institute. So again, this is a requirement for BPSOs to be involved with, and it's really to help support those in leadership roles within the BPSO to understand the implementation process. And we utilize not only the knowledge to action framework that's contained in the BPG toolkit, but also utilize many of our BPSOs to bring their stories and explanations of how they've used different aspects of the knowledge to action framework within their work. The Advanced Clinical Practice Fellowship, there is a requirement to submit an application for ACPF. And Julia spoke about her experience being an Advanced Clinical Practice Fellow. This is an opportunity for an RN to have a very focused self-directed learning experience. And because obviously the focus here is on guideline implementation and evidence-based practice, ideally the application for this would be relevant to the guidelines you're choosing for implementation. Just so you know, we will be releasing an RFP for the ACPF program in November, and we'll be running virtual information sessions about that program and that opportunity later in the month of November. So if you don't know an awful lot about it and might like to learn more, that might be an opportunity for you to participate. We do have regular knowledge exchange meetings with our BPSOs, so that provides opportunities for them to speak together, get to know each other, and also offer suggestions and guidance and support, problem solving, brainstorming together with their coaches, and also mentorship. And so we're very fortunate that with our growing number of BPSOs in long-term care, we now have a growing number who are available to help support and mentor others, whether it be on specific guidelines or maybe about the implementation process. I have to say that organizations are incredibly generous with their time and their resources when it comes to helping support others within the BPSO program. In capacity building at the annual BPSO Knowledge Exchange Symposium, and we've spoke about that in the video as well. So this is an opportunity annually for all of our BPSOs to come together, whether they're in the pre-designate phase or designate, whether they're within Canada or beyond. And so this year we're actually hosting it virtually in November, but last year we had an in-person event that had well over 200 people in attendance, and it's extremely motivating and energizing to see the excellent work that organizations are doing related to their evidence-based practice implementation activities and the work of their champions. So in terms of capacity building deliverables, we've mentioned champions, the Advanced Clinical Practice Fellowship Program, the Clinical Institute, opportunities for knowledge exchange, and mentorship. Sustainability is critical, and both Kerry and Julia spoke about sustainability and the importance of that. And so we do expect, as part of your BPSO work, that you would develop a sustainability plan by the end of year 2 of your pre-designate period to be able to ensure that you've got the structures, processes, and staff in place to maintain the good work that you've done. Reporting is also important, an important part of the BPSO experience. And so twice a year, our BPSOs in the pre-designate phase submit online progress reports, written progress reports, that we have a very specific template that they complete based on the deliverables that we're discussing now. We meet with them to review those reports, have a discussion and a dialogue, usually about an hour or so, with their coach, myself, other members of our implementation science team, feedback from our evaluation team, and of course the BPSO lead and others from the home that wish to join us. And we really find that those calls and the report review process is really an important part of us helping to support and understand where the strengths are, where the challenges are, and how we can modify the program to address any needs that our BPSOs have. There's also a requirement for evaluation, and Julia in her video spoke about submitting data to NQuire. So NQuire stands for Nursing Quality Indicators for Reporting and Evaluation. In the RFP, there's some details there regarding the fact that NQuire is a mandatory requirement for BPSOs that are participating in the program, and there is an expectation that BPSOs will submit data on human resource structure indicators, process, and outcome indicators related to the specific clinical guidelines that they're implementing. And there's some details, as I said, in the RFP. We have a team, highly qualified, engaged team of individuals who can help you with your evaluation activities in terms of selecting your indicators. Where will you find sources of data? How is it best to introduce and enter data into the system, etc. So we have a whole program in place to be able to support you with that work. Dissemination is another key deliverable for BPSO, and this involves presentations, which both FJ Davey and the Wexford have done today, but it also includes publications, manuscripts for publications, opportunities to do presentations at various different conferences, at our clinical institute, for example, etc. So we really do see opportunities for you and expectations for you as a BPSO to share the outcomes of the work that you're doing with others, whether that be in person, virtually, and certainly having social media presence also helps as well to spread the word of what the good work that you're doing. So what happens? Once you've submitted your proposal, we will have we do have a well-established process for the review. So we do have a review committee that will include about 4 to 5 reviewers, members of our team, implementation science team, which will include our BPSO coaches, our evaluation team, myself, and others who will review the applications independently. We'll aggregate the scores, and then we made the selections based on the scores and the qualitative comments from the reviewers. Sometimes we do need to go back to the applicants to get a better sense of some of the questions or areas for clarification that we'd like to discuss with them. But basically what will happen then is that the successful applicants will be identified based on the review scores. And then, of course, we will inform the applicants in writing of the status of their application, whether they've been successful or not. So some important dates. So we've already got past the first one, October the 2nd, which was the release of the RFP. November the 16th is the date due for the letter of intent. So basically what that requirement is just for an email to come to us to say that you are planning to submit an application, that you have the support of your organization. And once that is received by us, then we'll be able to release to you the link for you to complete the actual online application form. The RFP deadline is December the 7th, and the release of the results will be expected in early February. Our intention and our hope is that we'll be able to get all the contracts signed by the end of March so that we can have the BPSO launch in April, and hopefully that'll be in person. But if it's not in person, we'll do it virtually, and we actually had that experience this year with Cohort G, and it went very, very well. So regardless, we're aiming to have a new cohort start in the spring of 2021. So at this point, I'm just going to stop. We've just got a very few minutes left for questions, but I'm just going to check to see if there are some questions in the chat at all. And I'm not seeing any, so I'll just give everybody a moment to see if they'd like to ask a question, or if you wish to unmute yourself, you're welcome to do that as well. Just while you're thinking of your questions, I will say that we have recorded this session, and so we will be posting it on the website on our RFP page. So certainly if you want to review any of the content, or if you wish to direct any of your colleagues who might be interested in this, by all means, the recording will be available for them to help support you in your dissemination. Now we did oh, okay. So somebody's just asking about what's necessary to write in the letter of intent. So really, it's not really a letter. It's just an email, and there are some details in the RFP itself. But basically, we'd like to know the name of the organization. That you are planning to submit a proposal to the RFP in December. That you have the support of your organization, and that you have a good understanding of what the BPSO program is all about. So it's really just an opportunity for us to gauge the interest, and also for you to take the first step in terms of committing to submit an application. I will say that the letters of intent are not binding, so if you find that after submitting a letter of intent you are not able to move ahead with an application, that's okay, that's fine. But certainly we do and will need a letter of intent if you are actually going to submit an application, because it's that letter of intent that then allows you to get access to the online application form. I'm just checking to see if there's any new messages here. That's no problem. Okay, and I think, as I said, we'll post the slides. Post the presentation on the RFP website so that you'll be able to access it at a later date if you have anything you wanted to review or share with others. And at this time, it looks like it's exactly at 2 o'clock. So once we'll wrap up now, but just to say that the recorded video will be on the same site or same page as you found the RFP. and we'll post it as soon as it's been edited and available for you to view. So I'd like to again thank you so much for your time today. Very excited about the amount of interest that there's been expressed in the RFP this year, and we're very much looking forward to receiving your proposal. Please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to either myself or Sitlali, and we'd be very, very happy to respond to any questions that you might have. So with that, I'll wish you a good afternoon, and thank you very much again for joining us. Bye for now.